Okay, let's be honest. The church has definitely dropped the ball when it comes to young singles. But the question is the church actually sabotaging single people's love lives? Let's go ahead and get into it. Hi, my name is Adora, and this is Miss Adora TV, where we talk about all things faith. We talk about lifestyle, we talk about business, and we talk about personal development. And today we're going to be talking about, is the church actually sabotaging women's love lives? And maybe even not even just women. From what I've seen, they've been sabotaging many people's love lives, especially the young professionals under the age of 45, but over the age of 30. So what I noticed is when I go to these churches nowadays, there's either a women's ministry or a men's ministry. And there seems to not be any mixing of the sexes. And I'm wondering, what is this about? And at first I thought it was maybe just the local churches that I was going to. But unfortunately, as I got into more Christian connection groups, especially online, I realized that this is actually going on all over the United States. So is there some type of war on married versus single people? We don't know for sure. But what I can tell you is they are definitely keeping us apart. One of the things I do want to bring up during this conversation is, where are the singles groups? Is the church sabotaging us by taking away the groups of us mingling together? I know for sure when I was 18 to up until 29, I was able to go to groups and they were definitely co-ed groups. But now as I go to church and I visit other churches, I'm noticing that there are no co-ed groups. In fact, I decided to go to a new church about 2 years ago, and I was just going to check it out and see, are there other people in that 30 to 45 age range that I could kind of connect with. I loved the service. I thought the music was great. They had small groups, but I wanted to see, was there a way to meet other Christian singles? So guess what? I decided to ask. And so I looked on there and I asked them, I said, hey, are there groups for young single people, young professionals, they usually call us? And they said, well, you have to just check the website. So I got on the website. I saw a group that was co-ed on Sundays after service. And then you can kind of mingle and eat lunch at this person's home. So I reached out and I said, I'm going to call him Joe. I reached out to Joe and I said, hey, Joe, I see that your group is brand new and it's co-ed and it meets after service. When does this start? And he messaged me back and he was like, hey, it's actually going to start the next week if you want to come and check it out. So I came to check out the group. I was the only one and me and my other two friends at this group. So I said, hey, Joe, where is everybody else? He said, well, I'm unable to promote the group. I said, well, why aren't you promoting the group? He said, well, I have to ask the church if they can maybe announce it during service or something like that, just to make it a little bit bigger. I said, okay, well, maybe that's something I can help with, considering that I am a marketing professional, right? And so we had a good time. We ate lunch. His parents were sweet. They cooked us lunch. And then we actually just kind of watched the game. And so me and my other two friends had a good time. And we left Joe's home, just letting Joe know that, hey, we're going to do the best we can to kind of get the word out about the group and then make for sure people know about it. And then I would actually reach out back to the church and let the church know that is there, or at least ask the church, is there a possibility for us to just promote the group, whether we're passing out flyers as people leave service or during the announcements or whatever we can do to just let them know about this particular singles group. So I left very enthusiastic about possibly finally having a young singles group that was co-ed and just ready to reach out and kind of get the ball rolling. Well, I reached out a couple of days later during the week and I said, hey, is there a way to promote this particular group? It's co-ed and we are just trying to get things off the ground. Well, I get a message back and I actually get a call back and she tells me that we don't have any co-ed groups at this church and we don't plan to have any co-ed groups at this church. So I go on to explain to her, I said, well, how are the young professionals supposed to be mingling and meeting people if we're not together, if we're not mingling after church or during, Bible study or something? Like there's no avenue to actually connect with other people in our age group. And she said, well, unfortunately, we don't do that. And if you want that to happen, you would actually need to go to another church. And so not only was I not getting the answer that I wanted, but I was actually being told that I need to go to another church. And so I asked, I said, is there someone else I can talk to? Because it sounds like you are not willing to understand what I'm trying to say. And so she reached out to, I believe she was another pastor, and she was an older woman. She was around, probably at least in her 60s, definitely in the boomer range. And she gets on the call, and she was very sweet. And she said, hey, so we don't do co-ed groups anymore, but we do have women's groups. Well, I explained to her, like, I don't want to just be in a women's group. I have plenty of my own friends, first of all. And then also I've been in plenty of women's groups. That's almost at every church. I wanted to see, could we have a co-ed group? And how are young singles supposed to meet if we don't ever have these groups? Well, she was very empathetic with me. She let me know, she had been married for 35 years, and she actually met her husband at the church at once upon a time, and there was a co-ed group at once upon a time. And then she let me know that there was another woman similar to my age range, and there was two different groups where they would just kind of meet up and go to the movies. So there was an all women's group, and then there was an all men's group. And at some point they started to, without the church, meet to go to movies and things like that. And that's how that one particular woman met her husband. So I asked her, I said, okay, so you met your husband at church, and the other girl, she met her husband at the church too. So what is the problem with us having a co-ed experience? And I will say this, she was honest. She told me that, she doesn't know why that's happening now. She did let me know that she thinks that, it is healthy for men and women to be in a co-ed experience, but that's something that's just kind of not happening at the church anymore. It's kind of a higher up kind of thing, and unfortunately, it's just not gonna happen. That's when I knew when it was probably a bigger issue. It's not just the few churches that I had visited. Now it seems to be men and then women over here, and then we never get to meet. And so it kind of is the church sabotaging that experience. Because if you don't meet at church, then where are you supposed to go? Which leads me to the next question here. Since the church doesn't want to have co-ed groups, why don't they have mixers, right? And so I have actually been to some of the larger churches that do have what they call like singles nights and things like that. And there was, I would probably say, at least 80% all women there. And then even worse than that, though, was there was no young people there. Like there was typically people 50 plus at these singles events, right? And so again, I'm at another church, and I asked one of the leaders. She wasn't a pastor, but she was like one of the actual leaders for the singles group. And I said, hey, are there going to be different age ranges going forward for these mixers? Because it seems to be like predominantly older singles coming to the groups. And she was like, well, unfortunately, we won't be breaking up age groups or anything like that. So it's just like whoever comes. So not only are they not having these groups, when they do finally have the groups, everybody's kind of thrown in together. Okay. And so the problem with that is that somebody that's single at, let's say 35 is and never married, no kids, nothing like that. They're just getting started. It's probably a lot different than somebody that's 65, possibly divorced with 3 adult children, right? So it's 2 different experiences, but yet you're being grouped into one. So again, that is a little bit of sabotage, because we as young people don't want to go to the church and just hang out with people a lot older than us, particularly our parents, basically. And I was told that that's kind of how that works. And so I'm thinking that these are just my experiences till I start reading these comments in these groups. I'm actually going to show you guys a few of the comments on what's going on inside of these groups.
Okay, so these are a few of the comments that I have been seeing inside of Facebook groups, which I can get a lot of Facebook groups with a lot of like single millennial aged professionals. And so one of the comments says, "Hi friends, any suggestions on how to meet people in person these days? Here's my struggle. I work 3 jobs and my friend groups include people who are either A, married couples, or B, not Christians. There is no singles ministry at my church, and I rarely, if ever, see any singles attend my church at all. I have many hobbies which involves lots of people, but I've never met a single other Christian in these circles. Musical theaters, swing dancing, travel, etc. I haven't dated anyone in 4 years or even met anyone who meets my basic standards. Online dating makes me very uncomfortable. I'd love to try attending another church, but I'm pretty self conscious, which makes me really nervous to walk into another church by myself. Plus, going to another church purely for the purposes of meeting someone doesn't sit quite right with me. Any suggestions for me?" Well, she did get a few suggestions, but it wasn't quite what she thought. These other people had had their own experiences. So Sean said, "So just going to put this out there. But one of my biggest issues has been the fact that many churches use those who are single as a workforce for childcare, and rarely do they put in any effort to establish a good singles community. I personally don't mind taking a turn every now and then to help out with the kids' ministry, but it seems many churches heavily rely on singles because parents are wanting." Okay, so that's pretty bad. And Rebecca also had her own comment to that. She said, "Just existing would be nice to start with a singles ministry. I'm 30 and I'm too old for the youth groups, but too young or not appropriate for the other groups, married couples, singles, etc. Lots of mixer events that include other churches, events where we can interact without pressure, movie nights, pottery, visiting a farm, bowling, etc. Maybe even a fun dating profile craft night where you make an in-person profile poster board so others can know more about you, etc. LOL." So as you can see, there is a issue going on where it seems that young professionals are just not being even addressed. Okay, let's try another comment. So she writes, "So I asked Blank Church and Jesus Culture if they would be willing to participate in a single mixer, and both declined. Why are churches so reluctant to help the singles community connect for marriage is the question that all 7 of my girlfriends and I are asking ourselves. Out of the 4 big churches in the Sacramento area, only one, Bayside, has a singles group. Average age is upper 50 to 60 years old, so it's more like a senior citizens group. Do you guys think that the church doesn't care or wish to invest money and time into singles ministry? Do you guys feel that loneliness is impacting Christian singles, creating addictions or mental health problems? Hashtag churches and singles." That is a very good question. So let's read some of the responses that she received. Okay, so Jen actually replies to her comment and she says, "I don't understand why the church doesn't have more things for singles. There doesn't need to be alcohol involved. I read the comment about lawsuits and just feel that it's kind of an excuse. They could host a potluck in the park, pickleball, or once a week/month have a single service. Just my thoughts. I don't think that's a bad idea, Jen." Alyssa also replied. She said, "This has been my experience at any church I go to. They focus on the family and often neglect the singles. I joined a Christian singles group, and yes, it's often 50 plus divorced individuals. I know God has put in my heart to be married with kids. I can despise the church's season of waiting and God's timing approach. It's a struggle that it isn't acknowledged."
So, as you can see, one of the comments actually was brought up was, does the church want to sabotage singles' love lives because they see marriage as more valuable than being single? I would probably say yes. And I know a lot of people have some kind of mixed responses on this. If you have some thoughts on the question, does the church value married people more than they value singles? I would love to hear what your thoughts are, because I have my own thoughts, but I want to hear what you guys feel and what has been your experience. Have you seen these young singles groups? Have you seen churches try to form these young singles groups? What has been your experience? So one of the things that I do want to bring up too is that as they are basically promoting the marriage conferences, the money management conferences and things like that, I'm wondering, why are the churches not actually bringing up singles events for specific age groups? And so again, it goes back to just kind of being thrown in together with everybody else.
Just to read a few more comments, Rebecca says, wait, those exist for over 30s? All kidding aside, even though I'm crying on the inside, it would be nice to be included in conversation that wasn't marriage/family focused. It's spoken about in a way that has conditioned us to believe that marriage is the only answer. Reality is, it's not promised for all of us. So what about that topic? Topics like living now, in this moment, not marriage-minded, but kingdom-minded, or how to deal with the deep longing. I think that's a very good point. Ashley says, gosh, we are in the same exact boat. Glad to know I'm not the only one struggling. And there were some more guys that replied. They said singles are more useful as free labor to many of them. And another guy says, I think it's American culture in general. It's very individualistic.
Oh, he has a good point here, right? He has a good point. Does the church see singles as free labor or free assistants or free volunteers, and not necessarily valuable as they do married couples? Now, that's a question that we don't have the answer for, but we can look in our own churches, or we can go to and visit other churches and see, is this something that's consistently coming up? Are we not being valued the way we should be valued in church? And how do we change this? Is this something we can change, or is the church really actually sabotaging our love lives? Now, this is a question that I'm not going to be able to answer, and you probably can't answer either. But I think this opens up the conversation, because I was watching a video not too long ago. This particular woman was actually talking about how the church is actually sabotaging Black women particularly. But I think that this topic goes even broader than that. I think it goes broader into sabotaging women, young men in general, causing young people to not want to go to church. Because if you are single and you're only valuable when you're volunteering, or you're only valuable when you are helping out the church fundraise and all the other activities that they do during the year, but at the same time you're not able to meet anyone because you're stuck in these one-sided groups where it's just all women and all men and all people that are not within your range or in your life stages, then it makes it hard for you wanting to build a community. So how do we go forward from there? So in the next video, we'll talk about some of the ways that I have kind of gotten around this church sabotage, and maybe how you can get around these things too. So let's talk about that in the next episode. Until then, I will see you in the next one. Bye now.